Okay, let's go back up here to our table design grid. And of course, the fast way to do that is to just simply use your mouse. We'll just go ahead and click there. I'm going to go ahead and click the shutter bar here to close that again. So let's go ahead and get our invoice amount field defined here. So go ahead in our field name, go ahead and type that invoice amount as one word using the same naming convention with the capital at the beginning of the first word and a capital at the beginning of the second word. Once you've got that in, go ahead and click the tab key to move to the data type field, and this time we're going to change our data type to currency. So you can use the drop down menu, or you can just type in a C for currency. Once you've got currency selected, go ahead and click the tab key to go to our description field. And the information we got from our customer, there is no need to enter a description for this field, so we're going to go ahead and skip that. Now, typically, when you're doing database design, if you've assigned a descriptive field name and the field does not necessarily fulfill a special type of function such as primary key or some type of calculation, you usually do not need to enter a value for the optional description property, which is why it is optional. Now, since we've defined this as currency and our customer has given us some requirements, they want the field value to be displayed with 2 decimal places. And of course, if we look down here at our field properties area, we'll see that we have the decimal places property here. And this, as expected, specifies the number of decimal places that are displayed to the right of the decimal point. So here, let's go ahead and position ourselves in this field. Now, once you position your insertion point, or select the text in that, Access is going to display arrows which you can click, and you see those at the far right here. So if we click that and drop that down, you'll see that we have options, and as we know, we want to select 2, so go ahead and do that now. Now that you have the value of 2 in the decimal places, go ahead and press the tab key to get down to the caption box where we're going to put a value of invoice amount in our caption property. Great, once you have that, that is now complete for defining our third field for invoice amount here in our table. Now the fourth field we're going to create is going to be our invoice date field, and this field will contain the dates from which invoices are generated for our clinic's patients. We'll define the invoice field using our date time data type. So let's make sure we go ahead and do that now. So we'll go ahead and type in invoice date up here as one word, and then press the tab key to get over and select the data type date time. And there we have that. Once you've got that information in, let's go down to our field properties area. Once down here, we're going to select our date format. And the format we want to select, we can just select our arrow here, see what we have available to us, and you see we have several different options for what type of date time we want to have for this field. Now our customer has told us that we want to find one that is a 2-digit month, which would be selected by MM if you're representing that for month, a 2-digit day, which we usually represent using a DD, and then a 4-digit year format, which we usually represent with 4 Ys to represent the year. So from there, let's take a look at what we have available for our formats. Now since we know our format, rather than try to select one which we don't really see what we want anyway, we can, even though this kind of looks familiar, and that's really what we want the month, the day, and the year, let's just go ahead and do this the manual method. And that will be to go ahead and put this in by hand, just as that we defined it. MM/DD/YYY. Now that we've got our custom format there, we want to go down to our caption and put our value of invoice date in here as 2 separate words. Hopefully yours looks just like that, so we can move on and do our fifth and final field for our billing table, which is going to be our invoice paid field. Now for this one we are going to have a Boolean type data type, which is going to be a yes/no field, to indicate the payment status of each of those invoice records stored here in the billing table. Now if you recall, the yes/no data type is used to define fields that either store true, false, yes, no, or on/off type field values. So let's go ahead, and when we select our default format for this one, we will make sure that it is set to yes, no. So if we click up here and create our fifth field name here, as I said, we will call this invoice paid. Once we hit tab, we want to select yes, no. So we select that, so that is yes, no is one of our predefined data types. And we can press the tab key here to move on to our description there. Now let's go ahead and take a look down here at our field properties areas, and you can see that the format is set up to yes, no as we wanted. If you drop that down, you see that, as I said earlier, we could set this for true, false, on, off, or yes, no, and we definitely want the yes, no format. So let's go down here and finish off this one by going to our caption box here in our field properties box. We'll just use the tab or the arrow key, and we're going to put in invoice paid here as two separate words. Once you've got that completed, we have finished the fields for this billing table. Now that we have that completed, let's go back up here, and we are going to set our invoice num field as our primary key, as we described earlier. To do this, we've clicked our row here. We've made this the current field. Now if we go up here to our design tab, and then we look at our tools group, you'll see that we have exactly what we're looking for, primary key, which will designate this field as our primary key. Go ahead and click the primary key button. You'll see the icon get displayed there right away. That key symbol is going to be next to our row here, and that's going to give us a physical indication that our invoice num field is this table's primary key. As you know, Access does not allow us to duplicate values for the primary key field, but if we wanted to change it later, we could toggle this button again. That would deselect that as the primary key, then we can select another row and designate that as the primary key. If you'll recall, you cannot give a null value to the primary key field because entity integrity prevents Access in most databases from accepting and processing any record that has that null value when it's designated as a primary key field. Well, now that we've got our table designed, we've got our properties set, it's time to save this table, and we're going to save this, as I've said before, with billing as the table name. So let's go ahead and click up to our quick access toolbar here. We're going to click the save button to save this table. We're going to give the table name billing. And we will click OK there. You'll see that that table 1 name is gone now. If we expand our shutter bar here, you will see that billing has now been added to our available tables for this database. With our table fully created now, let's do a little redesign work here. So I'm going to close our shutter button here, and we're going to move a field here using our design view. And what we're going to do is we're going to position our pointer on the row selector for our invoice amount field. You can see that I have that now, that pointer shape here. I'm going to click that row selector to select the entire invoice amount row. Now we want to move our invoice amount field so that it's before the invoice paid field. So what we're going to do now that we've done that, we are going to click and drag the row for our invoice paid field, or for our invoice amount field, and we're going to drag that right to the row selector for the invoice paid field. And once you release the mouse button there, you will see that your invoice amount field here is going to now appear between your invoice date and our invoice paid fields. If that didn't work for you, make sure that you are holding down the mouse button during your drag operation until you're at the point right before invoice paid. Let's go ahead and add another field here. I want to add a field called invoice paid. And when I want to insert it in between the invoice amount and invoice paid fields. So let's go ahead and click our invoice paid field here, our row indicator there. Now with that done, let's go up to the tools group on the design tab here. Go to the tools and we want to insert a row. Go ahead and click that and you'll see now we have an available field here or row here in between these two fields that we can now put our new field invoice item in there. We'll go ahead and leave this as short text and we will move down to our field properties just by using our shortcut of F6. Once here, we're going to put a default field size of 40. We're going to tab down to our caption and let's type in invoice item as our caption. We have successfully defined another field. And once doing that, let's go ahead and save button as we've made a change to our table here. And now that has been saved to our database. Now that you've done that, go ahead and close your billing table.